Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special lecture on how to write your research paper. Now, I know that you're all super excited to listen to this lecture as I go through the different parts of your essay. But it really is important because I know I can easily just post some of this information and you can look at it at your leisure, but I also think it's important that I spend some time, let's say 30 to 45 minutes, walking through this presentation and showing you some examples. Because at the end of the day, my goal here is to, not only show you how to format your paper, how to do the reference page, and how to put in those in-text citations that are so important, but to also ease your stress as it comes to, or as it relates to, your midterm writing assignment, because I know that this sometimes for some individuals is the more stressful part of the entire class, would be this research paper. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. I'm super excited. I know you are too. Okay, you're probably not, but let's go ahead and do it anyway. So why do we need to cite our references? Or in this case, we'll use the word sources. Well, you cite sources for support and to do a couple of different things. The first one would be to avoid plagiarism, meaning copying somebody's information or taking some information from a text or an article or even from the internet that wasn't yours, you didn't think of it, and you're using that in your essay. The second reason would be to give credit appropriately. So after you find this information that you think is great and it's cool and you want to put that in your essay, which is fine, but you want to give credit to the person that found or came up with or documented that information. So again, avoiding plagiarism is very important, of course. Giving credit appropriately, meaning that you're giving credit to the person that made that statement, that made that quote, that had that information in their paper that you think is relevant for your paper. So you want to use it, which is fine as long as you're giving credit to that person. The next one would be to advance the knowledge base, meaning that getting information from somebody else's paper is going to help you learn more. And as you put that in your individual assignment, if somebody were to look at your assignment, they would actually glean some additional knowledge as well. So we're advancing the knowledge base. And then finally, to make research easier for future scholars. That's another reason, an important reason for doing your reference page or citing your references, because it does make research easier in the fact that you can look at someone's article, paper, internet site, whatever, and you can see where they had obtained their information. And then so the same thing goes for you when you put that in your paper. If someone were to look at yours, the person looking, could see where you obtained your information. So it does make research easier as future scholars, including yourself, write on different topics throughout their academic careers. So cite sources for support, and to 1, avoid plagiarism, 2, give credit appropriately, 3, advance the knowledge base, and finally 4, to make research easier for future scholars. Now, why APA? I know a lot of you are probably saying, well, I learned MLA, and why do I have to write APA? I don't even know what APA is. I'm going to help you. We're going to get through this. So APA style is most commonly used to cite sources within the social science area. And you're talking about subjects like geography and economics and history, psychology, sociology, political science, philosophy, anthropology, and of course, law and criminology. So that's one of the reasons why we're going to use the APA writing style. So now the big question, well, we know what a reference page is. That's where all your references go. But what about this citing your sources thing? Well, one of the main things that I see, or that I have seen in teaching throughout the years is that the students will write a great essay. Everything looks great. The format's cool. It flows really nice. They've got a title page. They have an abstract. They even have a reference page. But they forget to cite their information in the narrative, in the text portion of the paper. And I'm going to show you some examples so you can visually see that a little further down in the lecture here. But for right now, I want to go over 3 different little pieces when we talk about when do I cite sources. Well, the first time you might want to cite in your text would be what we call a direct quote. And here are some examples. So here we have at the top, we have a direct quote. The author here is Schroep. We'll just kind of go over this one really quick. So we have Schroep, 2009 reports that subjects in the study, quote, should have been fully informed of the possible negative effects, page 253. So now when you cite with a direct quote or even a paraphrase, what you're going to see is that you're going to need to put a page number in there. Now, of course, the most important part is to make sure that you've got the author and that you're actually citing it. But don't forget, when you have a quote, you're going to want to indicate the page number that you found that on. Now, if you're just going to summarize some information, whether there's an author or here we have author unnamed, but you're just going to summarize information, and we'll go over this in just a second, you don't necessarily need the page number, you just need the author and the year. So here, look at the example. In the view of one critic, Schroep, 2009, the subjects were placed in more danger than is acceptable in this type of experiment. Because remember, you didn't come up with this information. This particular individual did. Okay, so that's why you're going to cite it. So let's dig into these just a little bit further, and then we'll move on. So what is a direct quote? Well, a direct quotation is a group of words or sentences that you copy word for word and use as part of your essay. Now, let me stop here really quick and just interject this thought. It's okay to cut and paste stuff. Okay, so you can, and don't go run to your English teacher or professor and say, hey, Farrar said it's okay that I can cut and paste. Well, you know what? Anyone that writes a paper, an academic essay or a paper, you're going to take information from another paper. You just need to cite it and reference it appropriately. Now, it's great to come up with your own thoughts, and you certainly want to do that, but you can use direct quotes and information from other papers. So let's look at a direct quote. Again, it's a group of words that you copy word for word and you use as part of your essay. So here's the example here that we have, and it shows you how it should be listed in your essay. So if you take a quote, the scientific method has well-known and important advantages. Schroep, 2009, page 24. It makes it very easy for an individual reading your paper to know that, hey, this is where this particular person found or obtained this quote. So it makes it very, very simple. What's a summary? Well, if your source is unnecessarily detailed, you may want to put the information entirely in your own words, meaning that you may want to take a big paragraph of information and shorten it down. It might not be your thought initially, but you're going to take that thought and you're going to kind of thin it out a little bit and put it into your own words. But you're still going to need to give credit to the person that had the thought or the information in the first place. So here's an example of a summary. Student test scores tend to correlate strongly with amount of time spent studying. Now, you didn't come up with that information. Maybe you got it from an academic research paper or something else, but here's the author and here's how you're going to credit that. Marigold, 2006. So this is how you would credit or cite a summary. And then what about a paraphrase? Well, a paraphrase is basically restating a section of text in your own words. And the length and the sentence structure will be somewhat similar to the original. So let's go a little bit deeper now into this thing called in-text citations. Now, I know this is a lot of information, but bear with me because I will show you some examples, some visual examples that will kind of bring this thing all around full circle. So just bear with me for a little bit longer. So in-text citations, 3 components of in-text citations: the author's last name or names, the year the source was published, and the page number, okay, if using direct quotes. So it's not really as difficult as you think. This is really it. These 3 components, these are the components of an in-text citation. So here's a couple examples of in-text citations in a couple of different versions, if you will. So here's more of the summary here. At the top, the author, Werner, 2009, noted that interviews are very common when conducting research. And then here we have a quotation, same author, Werner, 2009, noted that, quote, the most common form of interview is the person-to-person encounter, page 71. And then we have a third example, consider that, quote, the most common form of interview is the person-to-person encounter, end quote, and then you have your information. So here you have Werner, 2009, page 71. So a couple of different types or ways of doing it. One thing I want to make sure that you understand is when you, after your citation, whether it's a quote or what have you, if it's the end of a sentence, if your cite is at the end of a sentence, make sure that the period is after the information. So you can see here, you're not going to end here because this isn't quite the end of the sentence. A lot of students will put the period like right here, and then they'll have this, and it kind of looks like the start of the next sentence. So go all the way through and put the period at the end of the sentence, and I hope that makes sense, but I'll show it to you in an actual paper. A couple of other quick examples. Here you have Pascarella and Terenzini. Well, that's a mouthful, isn't it? 2009 report that stress contributes to a variety of disorders, and then here you have the same thing in a quote. Now remember, so this is more of a summary, this is a quote, and you're going to put the period at the end. So just kind of keeping along with that. And then finally, one more example, according to one study, quote, non-monetary rewards often produce greater results than monetary rewards. And this is where the information was found. So those are some examples of in-text citations. Let me give you just a couple more, and then we'll kind of move through. Actually, I won't read these. I'll just kind of show them to you where you can look at some different types of in-text citations as we go through here. Now, here's one in a paper. So I took a portion of a paper and kind of snipped it out so you could look at it. And I'll read it and we'll kind of go through it, but you can see you'll see the example come to light. So let's look at the top part here. The Supreme Court of Appeals based its rationale on the balancing test between state and defendants. The test weighed the state's interest in conducting a search of the defendant's expectation of privacy. And here you have Noronha, 2014. And now, so that's the author and the year. And look where the period is. This is the kind of the important piece. Sometimes the students will put the period here. It needs to be over here. So even if you go down to the bottom here, Supreme Court stated that obtaining a DNA sample from an arrestee prior to their conviction is similar to other booking procedures such as fingerprinting or mugshots, since the purpose of doing so is to record and identify criminals, and the author and the year, and then the period afterwards. So in APA, as you'll find out, there is a lot of in-text citations. Now, you don't have to go overboard, but you do need to cite things because you can tell after reading this comment or this information, that person really didn't know that. They obtained it again from this person right here. So I think I have another example here. Let me make sure I go here. Okay, so another example from a couple of different essays. We'll look at the top here. Described as well-behaved, shy, and polite, reliable self-discipline, and a fastidious teenager, Russell attended Toronto's Birchmont Collegiate for high school, and this is where they got the information from. So this was taken from an essay on a criminology essay on a murder suspect. But anyway, you have the author Appleby and 2011. And even if you're going down here, we'll look at one more where it was cited. And again, it may not just be from an author. You may find your information from an internet site or an article or something. So you may not have the author's name, but you might have the name of where it was found. So here we have a piece from an essay, Maryland versus King, and we can kind of read on here. Read on down. The Court of Appeals ruled that Maryland's DNA Collection Act did not violate King's Fourth Amendment right to unreasonable search and seizure, and it was found from this piece of information, Supreme Court of the United States, 2013. So you can see how it's not necessarily the author's name, but it was taken from either an internet site or an article or something similar. But I will show you all that again as we get a little bit further down. So in-text citations, signal phrases that blend your sources, use active and past tense verb. Well, what does that mean? It means that I'm going to try to help you kind of start off with how to start your sentence, if you will, to include those citations. So you can say something like, it has been reported that, according to Verner, 2009, okay? A recent study suggests, okay, several researchers note that. Many findings point to the fact that. These are kind of phrases that help you blend in your sources. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful as well. So how does the essay kind of look? So we're going to move on a little bit, and we'll come back to a couple of things as we wrap up. But how does your essay look, or what should it look like? Well, for APA, you're going to have a title page. And there's many different ways to do it. You don't have to do it as detailed as what it shows here. You're going to have this weird running header, and I'll show you what one looks like kind of at the top. And then you'll have your title part right here. Typically, it'll be double spaced and kind of centered in the middle of the page. Here's an example of a title page to try to help you out. So APA has this funky running header at the top and the page number. If it's super difficult to do, the main important part here is the information. Again, this is taken from an essay on Russell Williams, a murder suspect again. And here the student kind of made their own title, if you will, of what their essay was going to be about. And then they have the information on the class, who they are, the college, and the date. So that's one example. Another example would be, here's a case study on the case Terry versus Ohio. So here's the running header at the top. Again, you have the page number, and then you have the information. So here's the case, the class, the student, and the college. So if you want to throw my name in there, you can too. That's great, but you don't have to. But this is kind of a sample title page. Every APA essay typically has an abstract. And an abstract is a very short, one paragraph, quick summary that tells the reader what the paper is about. So that way, because a lot of papers, remember what we're talking about, APA covers a lot of topics, and some of these papers are very long and very detailed. And because of that, I don't want to read the whole paper to find out, well, the information I wanted to read about wasn't in this paper, so I go through this 10-page paper and it's not there. So an abstract will tell the reader very quickly what the paper is about. And then at the bottom of the abstract, it has keywords. So if somebody wants to search the paper using the find key, etc., they can search certain words that will help them find that this paper has those words in there. So maybe it's something that I want to read. So here it talks about this research paper is divided into 5 sections, details the life and crimes of David Russell Williams. And she kind of goes on and talks about that information. So again, only a paragraph, Now here's one from a case study, and you can see it's not very long, and it has keywords. So it's got the page 2, it's got the header, it's got the page number, tells us it's an abstract. Now I'm going to read this one because you can see exactly what we're looking for here. All right. A person's DNA is currently seen as their property, not merely chromosomes that compose their genetic makeup. In the media, true crime documentaries sometimes depict how law enforcement officers have to stealthily obtain a suspect's DNA, or news coverage of DNA evidence exonerating innocent convicts. Forensic evidence has become more accurate and necessary in court cases. In the appellate case, King versus Maryland, the one we're talking about here, the Supreme Court decided whether it is unconstitutional for law enforcement personnel to obtain a DNA sample from an arrestee of a serious felony and insert it into a criminal database without a warrant. That's the issue. The abstract is kind of the issue of the case. Now they have a little lead in here, which is cool. And then they talk about, here's what the essay is about. The essay is about the issue on whether or not it's unconstitutional for law enforcement to get a DNA sample from someone who's been arrested and put it into a criminal database without a warrant. And then it's got keywords: Fourth Amendment, DNA, balance test. So very short, not a lot of information, but it does tell me when I read this, now I know what's in this paper. So what about the body of the essay? What does that look like? Well, the first page, the body of the essay, here's an example. You can see how it's kind of set up. So again, and I'll show you a couple examples in a minute. There's not really much to cover, but it's going to have the header, again, at the top. Okay, it's going to be centered in the middle, and you're going to have 1-inch margins all the way around. Well, what about reference page entries? Now, first you want to determine the nature of the source you want to cite, whether it's a book, a journal, a magazine, a newspaper, an article, or something else. And then that's where you're gonna find the information from. But here I've got some examples to help you, okay, to kind of show you how to cite or how to make your references. So I color coded this to help you out. So look here. So here's an example entry for a book. It's color coded. So here you have Borg, MJ, 2006, and you've got Under the Lights, A Romantic Encounter, New York, Walden. So let's break it down. The blue is the author. The red is the date of publication. The kind of gray here is the title of the book. The purple is going to be the city of the publisher, and the gold is going to be the publisher. So this is this isn't your in-text cite. This is a reference at the end of your essay on your reference page. But it's color coded so you know what makes up the reference page. Now you can use, sometimes they have like EasyBib and some sites like that. That's okay too, but this shows you how to do it. Here's an example for a journal article. I color coded it for you as well. Here's an example for a chapter in a book. Same thing, color coded for you as well. Here's an example from an internet site. Now this is one where a lot of you will probably use. Most of you are computer searchers, therefore you might use an internet site. So again, color coded. So the endangered human, no date. They didn't have a date on this, but the person that used this found it on the internet. So you use the date of retrieval. Retrieved October 6th, meaning the date that you found it, you retrieved it. 2007, and here's the URL or the website where they found it. So blue, title of the internet site, red, date of publication. If you have a date, you put it in there. If you don't, it's no date. Number 3, the date you accessed the site, not the date of the article, that's the red one. And then finally the URL, which is just the website address, okay? If you did a personal interview with someone, here's an example of a personal interview. Now typically APA doesn't really have a way to cite a personal interview, but this is the best way to do it if you are going to do it. So you can see Smith E. personal interview on that particular date. And I also kind of threw in some sample references here at the end that you can go through at your leisure, and look at those that will help you as well when it comes to looking at different references. And I have some examples here for you as well. Here's one from a website. So just a couple of different examples. I have a couple from actual papers. So this is the paper again, Russell Williams paper. She has her works cited or her reference page, and you can see how it was done here. This was picked up from an internet site as well. Here was one that was picked up from a book. So here's some examples of actually sites that were done in a paper. Here's another one that was done from the Maryland versus King paper. So here's an internet site. You can see Maryland versus King, no date, the date of retrieval, and it was found from this site. So hopefully this kind of helps you out a little bit. Some helpful hints. Check the index or table of contents for the of the APA manual or your grammar handbook to help you. You can consult the Writing Center at MSJC to help you. You can also consult the online writing lab at OWL Purdue University at the following web address that I have listed there. And you can just follow the general logic of the APA style if you get stuck. But OWL Purdue is a great place to go to help you, okay? Some additional resources I put in here for you. Again, I would really kind of look at this one down here. The online writing lab at OWL Purdue is very, very good and very helpful. Here's what the website looks like. Here's a link to the website, and it tells you about in-text citations, and you can just search the writing style. Here you have APA. It gives you a little bit more information on that. An example of an APA format in the paper, I told you I was going to kind of show you that. An example paper is going to be posted on Canvas as well, so you'll be able to see it there. Please make sure you take the time to read it. And the next slide I'm going to show you is an example of a rubric to show you how your papers are going to be graded. So basically, if you look here, you can look on the left column, appropriate format, writing skill, development, content, and references, and you can see the scores that go across accordingly, along with the information that's listed in there. So you have basically 5 categories, and you have the point system going across there. So that's kind of an example of what the rubric looks like. So now let's look at a final paper to see kind of how it's formatted. So what I want to do is I want to skip over to some papers now and show you real quick. So this is basically, this first paper is going to be posted in Canvas, and it's titled Dealing with Major and Minor APA Confusion. It's been written to show you a little bit on how to write your paper. It gives you information on what an abstract is. So this is an abstract on what an abstract is. And then it tells you about how to format your paper. So I'll let you look at that at your own convenience. But what I want to do now is kind of show you a couple of papers. Here's the Russell Williams paper. So it's not necessarily a case study, but it's about, again, this individual that committed a bunch of murders and things like that. It's from a criminology class. You can see the face page. You can go to the page 2, which is the abstract, and we looked at this one already. And then you can go to the actual format of the paper, and you can go through and you can see how some of the citations were put in there. This student chose to caption some of the information on headings throughout the paper, which is totally acceptable. Okay, so you can do that. That's one method of doing it. I'll go to another example here. Here's a case study, Terry versus Ohio. You can see the running header and the page number. This is the title page. You can go to the abstract, again, very short. And then you can go to the format. And the way that this paper was formatted, they had the issue of the essay, the facts of the case. So they did it titled. Here, again, you can see, because this was taken more of a quote or a summary, more of a quote than a summary, they put the page number in there. So again, so they had some captions as they went through the paper. So just kind of showing you some examples again. So you have, again, a caption, but let's look at a citation. So if you were to read the court rationale, this person found it on Oyez, which is a legal website, 2019. And then when you go to the end of the person's paper, what you're going to see is Oyez, 2019. So that was the work that was cited there. So hopefully that kind of makes a little bit of sense as well. Another example of a paper, you have the running header, you have the title page, you have a very kind of short, which is okay, abstract, and then you lead into the paper. And I just wanted to kind of show you a couple of points here. So when you read, this is where the person got the information. And again, so we have here Gallagher 2012. That's the in-text site. So when you go to the back, you're going to see Gallagher 2012. That's the reference. So she's referencing this in the text. So again, I hope that kind of makes sense to everybody. And then the last one, again, this is the Maryland versus King case. You can see the title page. You can see the short abstract as we go through. Here, it's kind of more of an essay style. They didn't use captioning. They just, nice sized paragraphs for each thing. As you go through, it's, I like it 3 pages long, but all that information will be in the syllabus, so don't worry about that. And then you get to her reference page, and you can see where her references are. So I'm really hoping that this kind of helped you out a little bit as it relates to how to make the essay look functional and work. The last thing I wanted to do now, while this is a current class that I'm teaching right now, I went to the Canvas shell, and I wanted to show you where your midterm essay stuff is located. So this particular class did have the essay Maryland versus King. If you click on that, it tells you what I'm looking for. In there is going to be this audio lecture. So the students had the same thing. They'll have this same PowerPoint presentation or lecture without the audio. So if they just want to look at it, they'll have that example paper. They'll have the writing rubric, and then they'll have something in here, how to upload your paper, which basically is some information on how to, once you're done with your paper, how to upload it. So I know that was quick. I know it was a lot of information. I thank you for hanging in there. Don't stress about the essay. Take the time to go through the PowerPoint, look at some of the examples, and you'll be fine. So with that being said, that's going to conclude our fabulous lecture on how to write your essay, and I hope that it was informative and helps you out. And of course, if you have any other questions, you can always post them on the discussion area, the online discussion area for my classes. You'll see it's titled The Donut Shop. Gee, go figure. But anyway, you can post those in there. You can email me direct if you have any questions on the essay. So with that being said, that's going to conclude our lecture on the midterm essay. Have a great day.